I've had such a really, really lovely response from people. I oh,
I thought it was falling down on you. Although technically I shouldn't laugh if I thought the building was falling.
Hello and welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with Rosie Gilmoss, and joining me today is my husband, Jonathan Gilmoss.
Hi, Rose. Hi, everybody.
Affectionately known as the alive husband. That's kind of sticking, John, I'm afraid.
I'll stay that. I mean, it was touching at one point, wasn't it? So,
if you wouldn't mind. So, thank you everyone for joining us again. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about Emma Gray's episode, which went out on Monday. For those of you who haven't listened, it is a very moving episode. She's our first sort of military wife to come on, and whilst he didn't die in combat, the way that the military deal with grief and the kind of impact on those left behind is slightly different, because when somebody is in the military, I suppose you live with the acceptance that you may get that awful news. But I think what you don't get is the notion that a young, fit Marine will get cancer and die young. I guess perhaps you're prepared for one type of catastrophe, but perhaps not the other. So it was really interesting, and it generated quite a feedback. I've had a couple of lovely messages from friends of mine just saying how much they liked her, actually, and how much they could really feel that love. And, you know, when he talked about, he made lockets for people and wrote notes, and it was just, I don't know, this idea of legacy came up quite a bit again, which was really interesting.
it's the first military family widowing interview that we've done. And, you know, some of the concepts that came to mind, I'd never thought of, like, the delayed grief because he goes away on tour. Like she says, he was away for 16 of the 18 months of, I think, their second daughter when she was born. So, you know, when he initially passed, she just went into, as she called it, single mum mode. And then it was the fact that he was never coming back through the door. And again, it's just another side of grief.
Yes, I sort of felt that as well. The idea that if they are not always a kind of constant physical presence in the home, be it work or whatever the circumstances, it perhaps, I mean, Emma said it does delay that process, because them not being there is kind of normal until it's not. And then it really isn't. And I think knowing that they're never going to come home, you're never going to hear the thud of the bag as it lands in the hallway again. Ben used to work abroad. He only went away he tended to work 1 week a month. And I missed the sound of his bag hitting the door and the door slamming, and, you know, that him telling me he was home. And I suppose for Emma, that really will be kind of amplified from the nature of what he did.
Yeah, it's just another cruel knife that the grief likes to stick in you.
Do you know what, actually, I met a friend yesterday, actually. I met her for a coffee, and she won't mind me saying this because she is coming on the podcast. And this is a friend that I met before I was widowed. We were doing a baby massage or baby yoga or one of those things that you do. And we hit it off and we stayed in touch. And, periodically we meet up occasionally. And then last year, her husband died of a heart attack. And it was horrible to watch somebody be in the position I had been in, and I suppose to see it from the outside, but also knowing what she would be going through. And we met up and we stayed in touch, and I've tried to offer as much support as I can. But I suppose what I wanted to talk about is that period. She's 9 months in, and that period where you're floundering and you don't really know what to do, because we talk quite a lot about the initial shock or the death and the lead up and the immediate aftermath. And then where we are, which is kind of popping out the other side, I view it as having dragged myself up to the top of the mountain and now being in a place where I can look back and take in the view a little bit. There'll be other mountains, of course there will, but those are the sort of periods in time that stick out permanently, I guess, where I am now. And I don't very often think about the sort of 9 months to a year point. And it is when of course, your support has died away because other people have commitments, and normality has crept back in, and you're hurtling towards a year, but you're still very, very lost. And she actually referred to the chicken and wine stage. And it is really lonely, the constant nights in alone and seeming like the world is just going on outside and just kind of like, what do you do with the kids after school? I remember just taking them to the park for hours and things, or driving them to McDonald's for their tea about 3 times a week because I just could not think what to cook. And I knew they would bloody eat it if I put any effort in. Um, and it's a kind of no man's land of grief, that period, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember the same. Like my entire clothing wardrobes and Holly's clothing wardrobe was in the laundry room, clean, but that's about as far as it got. And that the first year is just it's a blur. It's a bit like having a baby. Like
Yeah.
you don't remember the first year, the sleepless nights. You sort of have a memory of it, but you don't really remember it, do you?
And I suppose it's about the time where the dust settles a little bit and you do realise actually, okay, I've done the initial firefighting, I've pulled the kids through the initial flames and, they seem, that they're doing okay and I put the scaffolding in to support them where necessary. Okay, so now I kind of have to look at myself and think, do I want to carry on like this? It's sort of the point where you start to look at what life has become and think, okay, I don't know. I don't know. It's that the analogy of being thrust into a country with no guidebook, no knowledge of the language, and I think that's what you feel like. You feel like everything's settled, and you're just stood there thinking, "Oh my god, what on earth do I do now?"
Well, actually, that's when the choice comes in. Is the one that my counsellor, I think I've mentioned it before, and I mentioned it to quite anybody who listens. Really, she said to me, and said, "You have a choice. You can be happy, or you can be sad.
Mm.
But the path to being happy is much harder than the path to being sad."
And I mean, that doesn't obviously mean that you have to be exclusively happy. Of course, you're allowed to be sad. You're the person that you love has died. You'll be sad forever. Like that sadness will never leave you. But it's the idea that you are allowed to be happy and that you can sort of make some choices to help that along. You can start. You did this thing where you said yes to everything, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I ended up in a beta.
I was going to say you end up with a lads holiday to Ibiza.
Yeah,
You don't all have to do that. But I suppose it's when I don't know, you maybe venture back out into the world a little bit. And it might even be when you get to the point where you think you might like a bit of comfort or, I don't know. It is that sort of, I don't know, 9 months to 2, 3 years. It just does feel like a real no man's land. So I don't know. We'll try and think if we can think of strategies or anything that might help you through. But primarily, I think just pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, not to do dangerous or scary or risky things, unless that's your bag. But just to, I don't know, go and meet a friend for a coffee, or I don't know, go to the quiz night or something like that. Just it only has to be something little, but you can start to maybe. You might not be ready. Also, you might not be ready. You might want to chicken and wine for a bit longer, and that is really cool too. If that is giving you some comfort in such a horrible time.
I suppose when they first die, like your future's gone, like all your plans are gone, everything's gone. So once the shock and the dust have started to settle, you need to look at yourself and decide what you want from your life, and then how do I go and get it? And I think that's what my counsellor meant by happy or sad. I can stay a widow, and that will define me, or live my life to the full because I have the privilege of still being here.
And that's it. It is a privilege to still be here.
Yeah, and go out and, as one of our guests said, go grab life by the badge.
That's the lovely Julie Stonehouse. I regularly refer to that. And yeah, you are so right. It's the idea again that you set out on a path and you're happily pootling along your path. My life in my world was perfect. I was so happy, and it wasn't perfect. Whose is? But it was really happy, good life. And on the roll of a dice, it's gone. The whole life is gone, and that takes some bloody getting used to because it's not that the person you love taken from you. You've got the keeper of the memories has gone, the shared future has gone, the plans, the dreams, the hopes, and you have to find your own. You have to, and that is a really scary, big thing. And I spent quite a lot of time thinking, well, would Ben want me to do this? Would Ben want me to do that? What would Ben want for the kids? And actually, that has to kind of fade away as well because you are the one making the choices and you are the one that's here. And sometimes those are difficult choices, moving schools, moving house, that sort of thing. And also dealing with, navigating parenting children through teenage years is hard enough anyway, and many of ours will have still some residual trauma.
Completely agree. But yeah, I think that's probably the message that needs to be said rather than choosing happy and sad. I think I need to change my frame of reference. But it's finding yourself and what you want and what makes you tick and happy, and going and doing that. And start with a hobby, like you said, go for a coffee, or if you enjoy being with friends, just go and see a friend and just fake it till you make it, because you got to a certain extent.
It's very easy to become isolated, isn't it? Because you don't really want to go out of your bubble. I think it was about 9 months when my friend dragged me to the pub. Um, we got in a proper state, as you can imagine. But that was that point where I realised actually I could tiptoe into the world. No, I wasn't going to get struck down by lightning. The children would be safe. They're with my mum. You become, that's the other thing, of course, you become sort of super risk averse, especially when it comes to kids and stuff. Particularly, I think perhaps if you have a sudden death, because you just live under the fear of the lightning bolt striking again. But it is a fairly irrational fear, and you do have to kind of push yourself a little bit in those early days, I think.
Talking of finding yourself, you did quite the big thing this week, didn't you? Why don't you tell us about it?
It was lovely. A very dear friend of mine has a big birthday next month, and I wanted, rather than just going to the sort of night out that she'd arranged, I wanted to take her have a couple of nights in the sunshine. So we found an absolute corker of a deal in Sicily. We were good to go. Went to book in on Thursday. We were flying on the Friday. Flights cancelled. So a protracted phone negotiation, refund, rebooked, and got this absolutely belting deal to Santorini, where I've always wanted to go. And we had 3 nights in a really lovely hotel. And we just ate lovely food, and we sunbathed, and I read 4 books. And it was really kind of empowering, I suppose. And I feel I suppose, a bit silly saying this, because, how privileged I was able to leave my children with somebody I trust. I was able to go on holiday. And yes, I'm aware of that, but it's been a long time coming. It's not something I've done even prior to losing Ben. I've been a little bit anxious about traveling, and I've never really gone away with friends abroad, not since I was at university. Very different. And things like the plans got changed, like, obviously, and then I've just found out there was a Mount Etna erupted, and right where we were going to be staying, but it's covered with ash. So perhaps a nice swerve. But yeah, it was weird to be in my own company a lot, because we had separate rooms, and we sort of went, did our own thing and met up at various points. And it was really, it was nice. It was really nice. I would recommend it if you can, just to sort of go and have a bit of a breathing space. And I don't like this kind of feeling of wanting to get away from my kids, because that's not really how I feel about my kids. Don't get me wrong, there are moments. I suppose that's not what it's about, though, is it? It's not a break from your kids. It's just a break from remembering packed lunches and it's complicated after school schedules. And it's just a little break from the day to day, I suppose. And it really, it did something really good. And it's given me this, another of these kind of boosts. I did something that was a bit scary, and it went fine. So yeah, I can do it again.
Yeah, and yeah, of course you can. Yeah, but it's the reminder that yes, you're a mum, yes, you're a wife, but you're also Rosie. You're an individual, and going and spending time in your own skin and trying to get happy in your own skin, just gives you that reminder that actually, yes, I am a mum, yes, I'm a wife, I'm a podcast host, but you're also you, and give yourself that little bit of time. It doesn't have to be a holiday. It can be, going out for a walk. It can be.
I see how this has dropped down from Santorini to going for a walk. I see.
Now that I'm trying to project the point down to the people that might get away to Santorini, but take that time to be yourself and obviously live with yourself.
Yeah.
Make yourself your best friend.
Yeah, I know that I've spent a long time outrunning my head, whether it be, I've tried literal running, booze, dropping, whatever it might be, to sort of, and even, the doom scrolling we do on our phones, just, it stops you having to sit with your own thoughts and in your own company, I guess. And actually, I really have avoided doing that at all costs. And yes, I read a lot and, sort of disengaged that way from my own thoughts. But I also spent a lot of time just thinking and reflecting. And I suppose just looking back and thinking, God, if you told me 5 years ago that this would be how this new path ended up, I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't have thought it was possible. And it's making me feel tingly even saying it, but I didn't have hope. I didn't have belief that my life would be all right. I thought I would be so sad and so broken forever. I could not see that this was going to turn out in any other way. And to take the time to reflect on how far we have come, how far I have come. And I feel a bit immodest saying that, but yes, how far I've come from, the booze, swilling, hiding from the world, just, lurching from missed appointments and to being here where I can talk about the steps that we're taking to get here. Right? This is not ever intended to be a guide to wellness or healing an issue, but actually what we want to do is sort of share things that work for us, and they might not work for everybody else, but surely the only positive about the shit show, as Stephanie Hills calls it, and that she was speaking to her on Friday, which I can't wait for, is that you have this knowledge and this experience, and that's how we learn, isn't it? We share.
Yeah, definitely. And just to harp on a little bit more, sorry everybody. Whilst I was at home with the kids,
Oh yeah,
it,
please give you credit. Yeah, don't have thought.
no, it was it was a totally different experience to what I normally have, because normally I don't like being by myself. I need another adult just to be even in the same vicinity. But I found myself, we had a barbecue. I sat, the kids all then cleared off inside, and I just sat in the garden. And I was quite happy and content in my own skin, and I don't think I've ever been there. Um, and that was good. That was nice. And so, you had the empowering trip of going and doing the trip as well. But I had the staying at home and actually enjoying being with my own head rather than fighting it and being generally a little bit moody and a little bit grumpy and lethargic and procrastinating and all the rest of it. There was none of that, and we had a great weekend.
You edited 3 episodes, didn't you, as well, which I think is pretty impressive.
Yeah,
One other sort of, I guess, consequence of being widowed is often you lose contact with your old social circle. Uh, it happens quite a lot with couples. I guess the dynamic changes, and even if you're in another relationship, it doesn't always work out the same. And also, your mates, your girly mates that you used to have carefree nights out with and things like that, you don't feel very carefree when you've got this burden with you. Um, and I've got a very lovely friend who I have managed to friend many lovely friends. But Sam, I knew kind of before Ben and I were really serious. And so we've watched each other's lives, and we live very different lives. She's, lives in London, girl about town. She doesn't have kids and she's not widowed. But it was really lovely to reconnect with her and spend time that you wouldn't normally have. You normally have a dinner or a coffee, but to have 3 days in and out of each other's company was really lovely. And I guess a reminder that the old you is there somewhere. You haven't completely gone. And I think sometimes it's quite important to remember that. And you did something, well, not quite the same. You didn't go to Santorini, but you did go for lunch with your old business partners. And that, again, is sort of dipping your toe back into your old life, isn't it?
yeah, I did. Yeah, so it was sort of a meetup because 5 years ago is when we sold the business. So we were just having a little meetup to see how everyone's still going on. And I remember sitting on the train on the way up there, thinking, it was the start of an upward trajectory for the company and for us personally, but it was also the start of Sarah's demise.
Yeah.
So whilst they've carried on their path, my life took a very different turn, and I've effectively rebuilt it. But when I went and joined them again with this self-discovery thing, I don't drink anymore either. They do. We had a lovely meal. They were putting the wine away. They got absolutely smashed out, and we all actually had a wonderful time. And I left at the point when they wouldn't remember me being there anymore anyway. And it was wonderful to catch up with them.
Yeah.
But I remember I was sitting on the train. I was thinking, oh, this is a little bit weird. Which way's my head going to go? But it was fine in the end.
And I do think we build ourselves up so much. So I was, I wasn't going on holiday at various points last week because, I don't know what catastrophe I was foreseeing. There was a point actually on the flight on the way home, I was in an EasyJet toilet. and there was turbulence. And I thought to myself, this is how it ends. This is how it ends in an EasyJet toilet. Obviously, I lived to tell the tale of some mild turbulence, but the tendency to sort of catastrophize and predict what might go wrong before something happens. I don't remember being like this before I was widowed. I don't, but it could be getting older and more risk averse, but I don't think I was quite as apprehensive about things prior to this. So um and just before we sort of wash up for today, another key issue or a key sort of talking point, I guess, that came out of the conversation with Emma Gray was that about neurodivergence. And we were both diagnosed post being bereaved. And I've always kind of wondered why that meant I became so much more aware of it. And I think partly it was having a son go through the diagnostic process. And also, I think for me personally, it was when I stopped drinking, maybe, and I sort of saw what lay beneath, as it were. And Emma described it as just being too tired to mask anymore. And I thought, oh, yeah, maybe it is that. Maybe you are just so exhausted and you just cannot keep that facade up any longer. Now, there does seem to be quite a lot of widows who do find out about neurodivergence and after the bereavement. And I just wonder, why that is. I mean, is there a reason for it? Is it coincidence? Do we just become a little bit more aware of who we are? Many of us go through therapy. So I'm kind of interested in delving a little bit more into this. So if anybody has got any input or questions or any, suggestions, please do reach out to us. I did mention it last week, but I'm going to do it again because it's my podcast and I can. We have a Facebook group now, which is starting to grow a little bit of momentum. And it's a place where you guys can talk to each other. You can talk to us directly. We really want to try to grow a community out of this and sort of provide a place where you guys can interact as well. And also, it'll give us a direct line to what you want to talk about and what you would like to hear us talk about. So we're recording this a day early today. We usually record on a Thursday, but actually we're going to go to the podcast show in London tomorrow, which is quite exciting. A bit disappointed that it's going to be a bit hot for us to wear our branded hoodies, which we're very proud of, but you could probably sleep outside in them. They're that warm. So if there's anything exciting to report, or we see any, podcast celebs, we'll let you know, and it'd be really interesting just to go into that world because neither of us are from the world of broadcasting and particularly not from podcasting. So it is incredibly new to us. We've both been doing this since January and really kind of excited to see what goes on, I guess. I mean, on that note, it's a bit of a humble brand, but we have made it onto a podcast chart. We just got an email today alerting us to it because we kind of didn't imagine that we would have done at this stage. And it's international widowed based podcast, isn't it? I think it's and we're on the chart. I think we're 27 out of 244, which I think is not bad considering we're mere babies in the world of podcasts. So keep downloading, keep sharing us because this is really special. And I'm smiling my face up here because I've never been. I don't think I've ever been proud of anything I've done professionally before like this, and I'm so glad that I get to do this. And I'm people supporting, and listening, and enjoying what we do is what validates it and makes it worthwhile. So thank you, everybody.
Hello, it's me. I've just popped back to record a message. We've been to the podcast show today, and I'm kind of fizzing with I don't know, like excitement really, because it felt really cool to be part of something. And I think we're seeing this enormous change in broadcasting over to kind of podcasts as a medium, and it just feels it feels exciting to be part of something fresh. And I don't know, like down with the kids, man. But while we were there, I recorded a very brief little interview with Riverside, who hosts our podcast. And then I got massive imposter syndrome basically just before we recorded, and I said, "Oh my god, I need to just explain that I've only had a podcast for 6 months. Like I'm really, really new at this, and my figures are I've got about 20,000 downloads." And I sort of babbled on, as I do like to. And he sort of smiled at me, and I thought, "Oh God, I was going to say thank you, but actually, we wanted a real podcaster." And actually, what he said to me was, "You do realise that those figures are astounding, and that puts you in the 1% of the 1% for new podcasts from people who don't have an existing platform." And you can probably hear in my voice, it kind of really like, oh my God, I literally shook like a leaf. And yeah, I hadn't, I guess, because you don't really know what other podcasts, how many downloads they have unless they tell you. And you hear these enormous figures from celebrity podcasts. But wow, yeah, I guess so. Thank you, everybody that has downloaded it, because you made me really smile today. And yeah, it was cool. Anyway, I will shut up now and catch up with you all in the next episode. Bye.
So I think that's probably a wrap for today. And I just want to quote back to you guys something that Emma said in her interview. And it was, your grief is as unique and as deep as the love that you had for the person who's not there. And I just think that's beautiful. And hold on to that when you're worried that you're not grieving correctly or you're doing it differently to somebody else. It is unique and it's yours. And just take care of yourself. Bye bye.